Hey everyone, Sawmill Charlie. Well, welcome to another Friday night bee chat. Hey Todd, good to see you in the room here tonight. You got Randy and Ben and Bunny, and there's Sandy, and there's Keith. And let me go ahead and we'll drop the link in here. There it is. And it's pinned. Hey, Edward. Hope. Let's see who else we got here. Bundy. And there's Very Kind Bees. I think that's, I got to get my, here comes Bill. And there's Kathy. Hey, Kathy, good to see you. Out there a couple weeks ago, wrestling bees. How's Bill doing?
Oh, it's been busy this week.
Yeah.
It's been really busy. How was your trip to Georgia?
It was
Uneventful,
good.
Uneventful, I hope.
No, nothing really. No, let's see. I was just trying to look. Where are we at? Very Kind Bees. That's JT, right?
Yep, that's JT Barry, and Kathy is his
Kathy
fiance.
is Kathy.
Yep, that's his fiance.
Yep.
They were in my store today.
Is that right? They were two good beekeepers.
Yep.
And so yes, I got back Tuesday night for everybody. I went to Georgia last Sunday. Went down to Hardeman's apiary, picked up about 150 packages with a friend of mine that I been helping probably 10 years with Lloyd. And hey, Barnhill. Hey, Ryan. And so we brought back 150 packages, which is a small amount normally.
Yep.
And hey, Michael.
Hey, Todd.
So anyway, that's kind of our, I don't know, I guess you would say our final trip down. He's decided to quit doing the packages, and sales were down. I think a lot of people in our area go for nukes.
Yeah.
And all that. So nukes can be delivered. I think he sold us 260 some nukes or more. I've had other years even more than that. So anyway, we made it back, and I got out into my bees. I guess it was the next day. No, Wednesday, Thursday. It was either. I think it was Wednesday. I had grafted that Saturday before.
Yep.
I know me and Will were talking about putting a graft, and then there's the guy down in Florida, Chuck. He put a grafted frame in his demery up in the top, and they draw queen cells out for him. So Will tried it, no success.
Yep.
I tried it, and I put it in there. I checked it in about 2 hours to see whether bees were on it.
Yep.
And they weren't. So I had a nuke there that I was going to turn into a cell builder. Hey, Jack and Danette. And so anyway, I went through that nuke. It looked like to me, it definitely was queenless. been queenless for quite a while. All the brood is completely hatched out. Hey, Tom. And so I stuck them in there before I left, which I had a pretty good idea it wasn't going to take because they had been in the other hive for 2 hours. I'll say that the larvae probably had dried out because they weren't attended to. And so sure enough, I got back and all they did was clean the cells out and polish them and all that stuff. So I think it was yesterday I went out there. I put in 7 frames of cat brood. It's 2 medium boxes. Actually, it's 3 right now, but 2 mediums. I put 5 frames in the bottom of cat brood, 2 frames upstairs. There's a couple frames of pollen that was in the hives. Hey, Grammy, Lisa. And I put in a foundation frame in there for right now, just for a spacer for the graft. And so I think if everything goes well, I might graft tomorrow afternoon. It's loaded with bees. I mean, they're hanging out on the front. Last night, I went out there this morning and it was raining, and there was still a grouping of bees kind of hanging out the front.
Yep.
Trying to get in, or they were kind of chilled at that point in time. So the majority of them, I'll say 90%, were all inside. That other 5 or 10% is one was hanging up like a ball of bees up underneath the landing board, and a few right at the front entrance.
Yeah.
So I think I have the right combination as far as nurse bees. I will probably be shaking in. I'll harvest some nurse bees from the other hives and shake them in on top of what is already in there. Hey, Nancy. So I guess the biggest news, everybody has been talking about it a little bit on the sidebar here, is that tickets are available for Nobby.
Yep.
You have until May 15th to keep the old price, which is $175 a head. After that, Cayman says the prices are going to go up. I would suspect $25, so around $200, maybe more, but
Yep.
that's just my guess. And Tom, let's see. Oh, Todd, he's doing second round on his builder. We got it all charged up. That's cool. Let us know what happens. And hey, Lynn. As far as the dinner goes,
Still in the works.
that's still in the works for our thing. I know Cayman has his hospitality room planned. I guess it's also ticketed. I'm not sure what we're going to do at this point in time as far as any certain amount of money to kind of take care of expenses. We got to find a place big enough.
Yep. And that's what's still in the works.
It's still in the works.
Yep.
So I hope that we, Caitlin has his, but I mean, we have ours, and we're, quote, the no life beekeepers in here and all these different chats. We like to hang out with each other. So I've got my tickets already bought.
I got my hotel room.
I haven't got the hotel room done yet.
Or now there's an echo here somewhere. I have headphones in. I don't have speakers, so it's got to be on your end, Charlie.
I don't know. I don't hear an echo.
Because I can hear myself feeding back.
I already got, tuned off. Yeah, that's off.
Yeah, that's off. I don't know.
I don't hear anything.
Okay. Well, I heard it there for a second. So
Yeah, hold on for a second. Let me check on my speakers. No, they're all pointed the right direction away from the microphone. So anyway, that's what's happening with me. I've been went after, I guess it was yesterday, and I was able to cycle out 2 more deep boxes, 10 framers, and drop all the honey supers down to the brood chamber with the queen excluder.
cool.
All that. Added a honey super to one of them that I determined it needed it, and I got rid of, like I say, 2 of those frames. The cell builder that I had, it had a deep 5 frame on it, which I pulled all that out of there. And hey, Highland honey. And what's that?
Congratulations are in order to Clay again tonight. He had his son or daughter he's a grandpa again.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He had another
Okay.
grandbaby Friday
That's good.
or Monday. So yeah.
Yeah, Highland honey. That's Pete down there in Missouri.
Yep.
Well, that's good. I don't know whether Clay will be on tonight then.
Yeah, he's on here.
Oh, okay. There he is. So, see what else. That's about it. I was looking at the brood that was left in them deeps. They're just about completely hatched out. I'd say by Sunday at the latest, it's all going to be done, and I'll be able to pull a lot of boxes off and get things back to normal. I've only got about 5 or 6 more drawn honey supers left to put on. Far as nectar flow, we've had the locust bloom in here for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. Today I just saw the poplar bloom. I happened to be going down the road and seeing the tulip poplars kind of sitting there. We had a nice showery rain all night, or most of the night and half of the day. Here it's supposed to be nice and sunny over the weekend. And yes, Michael, yes, your package did arrive. I don't know whether it arrived just before I left for Georgia or right after I got back. Haven't had a chance to mess with them yet. Michael sent me some drone frames to try out, which I appreciate that greatly. And we'll put them in. I just been playing. It seemed like, when you go away on the weekends like that, you have to play catch up constantly between work and the bee yard. I was out there till about 7:00 last night. And, by that time I was getting ready to get in the truck by 7, but the bees were getting on the pissy side. They're like, hey, we want to go to bed. Leave us alone, or I'm going to sting the snot out of you. So we did that, So, but thank you there, Michael, for sending that, for letting me check that out. I don't know. You sent, it was Brian at Castle Hives. He did some deep frames and they are looking good. I know I did check on those ones that you sent me, which were mediums. There are some, the only thing they were drawing them out, but they drawed a bunch of a bunch of drone frames out on them, a drone comb, which I'm going to have to rework that thing. I did not give them any sugar water to go along with it. I figured the honey flow was on. Whereas Brian did feed them sugar water, a bucket of sugar water, which I think makes a big difference as far as drawing the comb out.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
And I should have done that. It's, I think maybe there's some cross comb or whatever on them. I didn't really have time to really look at them. I was trying to, my main thing is getting these deeps out of the mix, and I am like, I had a couple nukes that didn't take the mated queen that I gave them, and I found some queen cells in some other hives. One was a nice big juicy one, and I'm like, good. I know there's a nuke here somewhere that doesn't have a queen. I had it marked, and I put that in there last night. So, I'm trying to put out fires is what I'm really trying to do. It's like I got queen issues. I got 4 queens that I dropped in prior to going to Georgia that I got in, and so I haven't had time to check them to see whether they're. I'm sure they're released, but release and I had one that was. The last 4 I got were a little bit questionable about whether they're going to survive, and one of them, it was a high. I found 2 out of 4 highs that were queenless on those ones that I've been complaining about at the end of my row down through there. They were queenless, and I actually had set her on there. They seemed to like her. I direct released her. They were cleaning her up. She was a little on the sticky side. Hey, JW and Titrone. And so anyway, I haven't been able to get in there to look at them. I need my hive lifter out there. I was going to try to do some of that last night, but I just ran out of time. But I had like 3 or 4 hives open up at the same time. And I'm like, okay, I got, it's like I'm pulling frames out. All the broods hatched, and there about 3 or 4 frames where not every last bit of brood was hatched out, and I had space over. So I transferred them frames over to another deep box. And then I was able to get that deep box off of that hive and kind of like leapfrog the frames around in order to get rid of them. So it's been one of them experiences. Today's rain, nothing to do there. And tomorrow and Sunday we're supposed to be decent. I'll be able to get in and get into them and look, kind of play. And it's been 7 days since I've done a demery, so I need to get into the top of those and check the brood, check the bottoms for brood and stuff, and try to do a video here. I want to do a video on how I set up a queenless cell builder. Trying to make a step-by-step video there and all that.
Yeah, I took queen cells up to mating yard on Tuesday night and put them in, and we had 28. 4 of them they didn't complete drawing out. So that knocked it down to 24, and they had built a little cross comb on a couple of them, and as I was peeling the cross comb off, I ripped open a cell. So we got 23 in mating nukes, in mating nukes. So they're going to hatch out in a mating nuke, and they should be hatching today or tomorrow. So then they'll be in there for 3 or 4 days, letting the shell harden up, and then they'll go out and get mated. So I should have queens back by the end of the next week.
Yeah. I've seen Jed come in from Utah. I was on his and Bracken's live show last night. I wasn't on it, but I was hanging out in the chat. I want to say welcome, Jed. You said he would subscribe to me. So welcome. And if you want to, the link is posted up top. You can click on that and come in. Jed's I'm not really sure. He's Sideliner, I'll call him. He's out in Utah, runs quite a few hives in his backyard and out yards and stuff like that. Puts out a lot of videos. He's a YouTube content creator. I checked out some of his videos here recently. And so welcome. He's must be a neighbor of Bracken's.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was surprised. Glade, was it Glade? Yeah, Glade out there in Utah wasn't on the show last night either. But anyway, him and Bracken were having their first one of a few shows that they did. Did a fine job and all that. So that's where I'm at in my bee yard. I just need to do a lot of inspections, try to pull more of these deeps out, get everything standardized to all mediums, keep up with the demeries, and all that. And everybody, Jed's the legend. Yeah. Bruce was on there last night. It's Jed's Beekeeping. That's his YouTube channel. So check him out. He does a lot of some beginner type stuff, videos and things of that nature. He's actually doing the demery, but Jed, Bill does the one that you're talking about, which is the original demery, where he didn't know what the rolling demery was, which is just a different version of it, but
yeah,
and all that. But it suits me well for what I do. So, yeah, I'm the rolling version.
So I've got a lot of other stuff going on as well. I'm going to have a special guest on. Not sure if he's coming on this month or the first part of June. He's a distributor that I'm in negotiations with right now.
Okay.
A manufacturer that I'm in negotiations with right now. So that announcement will come out soon when all that's finalized. I've moved into 4 other retail locations.
Mm-hmm. Hey,
So,
Billy. And I'm eating Utz potato chips. That's an East Coast thing, I think. It's used to be only in around the Pennsylvania area here, but now I think it's a little bit broader span.
Yeah.
And all that. But yeah, I talked to the fella that owns let's see, what's it called? Foxhound Bee Supply at Knott. And I wanted him to come on and talk about his I know Brad had said something about it where they were discontinuing the bee suit that he has, the same one that I have, but actually they're not. They're rebranding and redesigning, making some small upgrades that really were nice. And I'm going to try to get a hold of him and have him come on and kind of give us all an update on that. I really like that suit. It suits me. Yeah, Utz was in Delaware. Well, actually, Utz started at is and still is at Hanover, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
But they have expanded. I do know, I think they have a plant in Ohio. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with my beekeeping thing. Still scrutinizing these queens. I pretty much made a decision here with more observation that I want to requeen every year. I want the hives to try to be at peak performance all the time. Something that I've noticed in the hives this year, I put brand new queens in last spring. They took off. Here comes Mr. Scott. And they took off and they laid up everything in the bottom and pushed all the nectar upstairs, of course, in the Sunny Supers. This year, they're not as prolific. And like the science gal out from Texas, I don't know what her name was. She said that queens diminished by 40% the second year, which I can kind of see that now.
Yep.
Where there's a little bit more nectar being backfilled in my brood chamber more than I like. And I think that's the reasoning behind that. And so I got to formulate a game plan here, try to get my own queens up and running and try to requeen, let's say in June, somewhere's in that area, June, July.
Yeah. After what I found the other day, there are a couple of hives. I tend to agree with you every year.
Well, I've talked to some different ones with Lloyd, and he's hanging with the American honey producers and stuff like that, to all the commercial guys. And I think because of all these viruses and things of that nature, the queens just don't last.
Nope, they're not.
And I'm sure because of mite controls that we use. I already know that they've had studies. I know Nancy could probably tell you more about this or not, about the drone class that she's been taking at Penn State, where certain pesticides, kind of knock the what do you call it, the potency of the queen, or the drone semen.
Yep.
Which in turn is in relationship with the queen, about how long the longevity of the queen, and all this stuff, kind of more or less coming together, and you're seeing it in your queens. And so I'm, like I say, I find it quite fascinating in myself that I experienced the die off in the spring of last year. I experienced queens that were failing tremendously. I, pulled them all out. 7 days later, dropped in a mated queen, cut all the queen cells out. Pretty much, I would say 100% acceptance rate. A complete 180-degree turnaround in a very relatively short time, I guess you might say, where instead of having a frame of brood and only a half a frame of brood on one or two frames, I went from that to, let's say, 6 full frames of brood. And that is a huge difference in the beehive.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the understanding is the queen is the engine, getting that understanding that the queen's the engine of the hive. If you got a crappy queen, you got a crappy hive. If you got a great queen, you got a great hive.
Yeah.
And really clearly understanding it. And I guess all of us, we try to tell our kids or whatever, don't do this, don't do that. And they just don't understand until they experience it. And I think that's the way with me with these queens. When I experienced it and I actually visually saw what was happening, then it clicked. And then this year, seeing what I had last year and not seeing the exact same thing this year, then I started scrutinizing my queens. Like the one hive out there, the yellow one at the end out there. Yeah, I had brood in there. It was about yay big, but shotgun pattern. So I'm like, she's laying, but she's failing.
Yep.
And it's like, don't wait around to where it's at the last minute. Get rid of her now and get something else in there that's young and vigorous and laying. And that's the two biggest takeaways I've had in the last 2 seasons is to really, you need to be evaluating the queen all the time or replacing her automatically. Now, some people worry, well, I got a second year queen and she's doing well. Yeah, I got 4 hives right now. They're doing exceptional.
Yep.
And that's what I expected out of all my hives across the board, but it didn't happen that way. So you either hone your skills to key in on that queen early on in the spring, and then you're going to have to buy queens from down south because that's the only folks that got them, unless you raise them over the winter and you raise them late, or you just keep, like I say, putting new ones in June, July, which they're not going through the flow. They're not pumping out the eggs. And I'm curious whether the Demery method is like Brad down at the Cajun Homestead, where she's laying 12 months out of the year down there. Am I pushing this girl to lay, I'll say, close to the same amount of eggs, but in a compressed time? I don't know.
I don't know. It's something to think about. It is really something to think about.
Yep. So, Scott, did you finally get that split made?
Did you get it made the next day?
That's why I jumped in here to give you guys an update. Okay.
Hooray.
So, all right. I'll try to keep
You have a hive up 40 feet up in the air?
I'll try to keep it all straight in my head. So, all right. So that hive I told you that was like a volcano that was like overflowing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know what happened. I mean, I've experienced this before, but I don't know how, but out of nowhere, they turned super mean, right? Like, I mean, crazy. I opened that hive. The last time I think I talked to you guys was around after I had been into them, like around April 18th. When I went there on the 23rd and I opened that colony, they flew out at me and they were just, I took probably about 30 stings to the leg, right? Like they had marked my legs.
What'd you do? Wear shorts?
No, I had a jacket on, but I had jeans, right?
Yeah.
So like my normal like thing is I have like a jacket veil and then I wear jeans and then I wear boots, right?
Right. They
had marked my legs. They had stung. Like I have a distance that I can walk that I'm 99% certain that when I walk to that distance, so when I walk up to like my truck or whatever, they're done with me. Like they fly back, they leave me alone. Occasionally I have to walk a little bit further than that in order for them, for me to get like the last guard off of me. This time I had to walk almost all the way up to the main road and they were still following me. I counted the stingers in my legs. They went down inside my boots and were stinging me in the calf muscles and everything else. They were crazy, right? The next day, the owners of the farm that I have my bees at, they contacted me and said the bees were like all over them and wouldn't leave them alone. They couldn't go outside. So I was like, okay. So I get down there. Again, as soon as I get down there, I get out of the truck. They're like right on me. So I determined that that's the colony that it's actually happening from. And I had already split that colony. The last time I talked to you guys, I had already split that colony twice, right? So I end up splitting that colony 2 more times. And then I kind of went down the line and reevaluated all remember, I only came out of winter with 4 surviving colonies. Now, big population colonies, but only 4 surviving colonies. And I went down through and the populations were just crazy big. So I just started splitting and splitting. And the next thing you know, right now, currently today, okay, and this number includes, Charlie, you had already seen this picture. This number includes this nice surprise I got when I got to the bee yard the other day with the 2 swarms on the fence posts. Right. So I have gone in around a month's time. I've gone from 4 colonies to 17.
Okay, let's back up a minute.
Yeah.
So, one question.
Yes.
When you were working those bees, when they were stinging you in the legs, were you standing to the side of the hive or in front?
Behind. I almost always try to stand behind.
Okay. On the front of the hive, did you see any scratch marks?
No. So that's the other thing I was going to say. So I've checked it all out. I have trail cams there and stuff like that too, right? There's nothing coming and bothering them at night.
Okay. When was the last time you treated for mites?
Well, so the last time I treated for mites would have been in probably end of March.
What'd you use?
Oxalic. So I just blasted them in there. So now there would have been a little bit of brood back then, but I mean, I think, for the most part, I mean, I gave them like
March
4
was
grams.
that was a good call.
All right.
Yeah.
So did you notice any queen cells when you split them?
Well, right. So that was the thing that I had talked to you guys about last time. So I got in there. Of course, there were queen cells in all of my colonies except for one, right? And that colony that didn't have queen cells would have been a split that from the previous year that I made probably late in the year. I had made a split. I had this one colony last year that ended up just really being prolific and really growing fast and producing a bunch of honey. It really did well, but then it died out. And it was the colony that I found in September or early October where the queen was just kind of walking around in there and there was only a frame of bees. But I had ended up splitting. They ended up having some queen cells around end of July or something like that or whatever. And I ended up splitting that colony twice. So the original colony and 2 more splits. And the one split was one of my survivors, but its population was definitely lower than noticeably, really noticeably smaller than the other remaining 3 colonies that survived the winter. And it coincidentally, is still the only colony that survived that did not start producing a lot of swarm cells. It has, however, filled an entire super of honey for me already. And I had to throw another super on there. And that super is completely full, all 10 frames full from.
Yeah. That's typical. That's where they should be.
Right. So so all the rest of the colonies just started since the last time I talked to you. All the rest of the colonies started creating queen cells like mad.
All right. Let me ask you this. When you did those splits, did you do walkaway splits or did you put queens in them?
Well, I didn't put any queens in them. I moved queens and left and did walkaways. So I only had the queen from that hive that I talked to you about that was overflowing with bees. I could not find her. I went in there 3 times and could not find that queen. I'm fairly certain she had split already. So,
did you do a shaker box and shake them down?
You told me about the shaker box, right? So the 3rd time that I went in is when because I had already checked them twice by the time you had talked to me about that. So on the 3rd time I went in, I did the shaker box and with the queen excluder, and I could not find a queen. So I'm pretty sure that she was already. The reason why I couldn't find her the 1st or 2nd time is because she was already gone.
All right. So, well, then that right there tells me that hive either swarmed,
right,
or they killed the old queen and they were queenless.
Yeah.
And she left them in a position of not being able to make a queen. That's when bees turn mean like that. They're typically queenless, or they're a monster hive and they're low on food.
Well, so here's the thing. They've made a bunch of queen cells. In fact, I was actually making a joke to my wife. I said, you know what, because it's kind of a testament to my wife, because I didn't think she really paid too much attention to me when I talk about bees. But she had said to me, she was like, I said I had found these queen cells in there at a certain point, and she said, well, it doesn't seem like, she's like, it seems like it's been too long for them to have had any viable eggs or larvae to do that from. And I was like, I know. I was like, I think they flew down to the local market and picked up a dozen eggs or something like that. Because I don't know where they made those additional queen cells from, because I just didn't think that there was any viable brood in there for it. But
then if there was no viable brood in the hive and they made queen cells, then they would not be viable queens.
No, I agree that and of course the jury is still out as to whether or not they were viable, because I just don't know yet. But so some of my colonies have successfully requeened. Not all of them, but most of them have successfully requeened. And believe it or not, I wanted to share this too. It was really kind of like surprising to me. In being a beekeeper for 5 years, this year was the first year in 5 years since I've been a beekeeper that I actually heard a virgin queen pipe. Like, I've seen videos of it, I've heard it and stuff like that, but I've never actually experienced it in my own colonies. So this was the first year. One of my colonies, as soon as I opened the colony up, I heard the piping. And I was like, wow. And the third frame I pulled out to look at, I could still hear the piping, was looking at the frame. When I flipped the frame over, my eyes went to the queen right away. Like, I saw her like right away. I saw her walking around in there, and I just put that right back in, closed that colony back up, and left them alone. But
well, if there's a queen piping in your hive,
yeah,
there's either another queen or a virgin in there.
Right.
And you saw a queen, she would have been gone immediately.
Yeah. So she didn't fly off. She stayed on that frame, and I put that frame back down in. I mean, I didn't see her fly off, and I put that.
No, I would have squished her, because there's another queen in a hive. That's why she's piping.
I got it. And I really intend to let them like sort it out themselves. They're either going to duke it out, they're going to duke it out.
But when you do that, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Well,
or setting the hive up for failure is what you're doing. Because if they mutually kill each other and they haven't been laying eggs, now the hive is out of a queen. And if you want to keep that hive going, you got to go buy a queen.
Well, okay. So yes, but the gamble paid off this time, because when I went back into that colony the other day, there was eggs in there. So.
All right. Well, that's good.
So we're good.
Yeah.
So
now,
we're going with that.
Now, with the eggs being in there, are the colonies calmer?
Yeah, so that was kind of like the thing I was trying to get to. So after I split the crap out of that colony and then came back the following week, there were no bees on me when I got out of the truck. There were no bees on me while I was working the bees. I checked with the property owners. They said they had not had any more incidences since that one, right? And the whole time I was there the other day, of course, I was going there just to kind of like check on everything, update everything, and to feed my packages, because I have 4 packages down there, and I think those packages have Gen Z bees in them, because I always have problems with packages in the beginning, with the bees drowning and causing kind of like a feed block, where they can't get down in there because the whole feeder. I use these. Well, they're like rapid rounds, but they're square, right? Like they're big rectangle ones. I've been using those for years. But enough bees die down at the bottom, and then like none of the rest of the bees can get to the syrup. So, and I always have problems with that, but usually only like 1 or 2 rounds, and then the bees figure it out and they don't drown anymore. But this time, every time I go down there, it's blocked up. So they're not really taking the feed as fast as I want them to, would like them to be
nectar source is coming in now.
Well, right. And that's the other thing too. And I think there's so much nectar coming in too. I think they're ignoring the feed a lot, on top of that. But in any event, I went down there to feed them, and, pulled in and like immediately saw these 2 swarms on on these fence posts. So I didn't, so of course I spent all the time trying to get those. The second swarm, which was a smaller one, which was kind of like to the left, when I had tried to scrape those bees down into the nuke box, apparently I did not get the queen down into the box, and she flew off just behind them. I don't know if you can see it from the image or not, but just behind off in here, I'll try to like zoom into this area. So there's like these downed trees and stuff they have back there that they're going to eventually burn. And you can see kind of like right here, this like the end of the trunk.
Yep.
They landed on that right there and just started, collecting there. So I knew the queen had landed there and that they were collecting there around her, which was like even more perfect, because then I was able to take the box in, put it right underneath that, just shake them down in. That did the trick. And, they all went in there, and then I waited and, for about 45 minutes or so till they were all in there, and took it out of there and back to the apiary. So
now you got 17 hives.
Yeah, so now I have 17 hives. I was not, I really wanted to grow, but I was not expecting to grow this fast. And all of them seem to be in really good shape. And again, like the bees have calmed down now. I didn't have any issues being there. I was there for hours.
Well, I would have to agree with Nancy there. There's probably because you had multiple queens
Yep.
in
Right.
there.
Oh, no doubt.
They were after swarms.
Yeah,
Yep.
no doubt. But I mean, I really felt like I had split them enough that I really was out of the woods with that. But, that's kind of like, that's the lesson learned there. Like, don't assume anything at this point, because
Sometimes splitting 1 or 2 times and then culling queen cells is the answer.
Yeah, great. So, so then the last thing I did was the last colony I went in was the kind of, colony, the suspect colony. Last one I went into that one, pulled the 4th frame out. There were 7 queen cells on one side, 6 on the other. 5 of them were, the bottoms were, chewed out. Basically all but 2. So there's 6 on one side, 7 on the other. 1 on the 7 side, not open, completely still capped, and the same on the other side. But the other ones, the bottoms chewed out completely. I'm like, how did they produce that many queens with eggs and larvae that, in my opinion, were way too old to produce queens?
Well, they can produce them, but what did they do? Cut the hole out inside of them and sting her and kill her?
I mean, they weren't inside; it was at the bottom.
They could have ate it out. They could have killed her and ate her.
Maybe. But
are you saying they were hatched with the lid hanging down, or they just
no, with the lid hanging down?
The lid was hanging down.
Yeah, every single one of them. I was just like I couldn't believe it. So now I don't know what happened to those queens. I don't know where they ended up. I don't know what the end result was of them, but I was shocked to see that many in there at this kind of stage of it, because again, I didn't really feel like there was any more viable brood in there for that. So, but again, they're all calmed down. Most of them have successfully requeened with eggs. I'm still waiting. The jury's still out on a few of them. The packages are doing really well. Everything just seems to be going really well. And I am dreading having to manage that many colonies in the middle of July. But
that's easy.
Just because, I'll be in that, just sweating, just absolute buckets, in the middle.
Hey, what? Come down here and manage mine.
Yeah. But I am pretty excited. I was pretty excited to see that one colony really doing well as far as producing honey. Again, I wasn't expecting to get a lot of honey this year just because I knew that I was going to have, I only had 4 colonies coming out, and I knew I was going to do splits and stuff like that. And I don't really have a big expectation of honey this year. So
how much, if you look around your area, is there that many? Do you see any good honey producing trees or whatever?
I mean, all it is trees, Charlie. I mean, is
it pine trees or oak trees or
no? It's Cadora State Park. I mean, it's trees and trees and trees and trees. I mean, it's gazillions of
tree?
acres of trees.
What kind of trees?
Well, so that's just it. So it's all your sort of typical. I mean, sure, there's pine trees here and there, right? But it's not a pine forest, right? It's more your typical trees. So it's locusts and poplars and
That's good.
you
They're all
know,
the
It's
good
a
stuff.
hardwood forest.
right. It's all the different, kinds of trees that you would expect the bees,
Yeah, but
to
if
do
you
well.
got poplars and you got locusts, you got two major honey sources there.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing that area doesn't have a lot of, and it's just because there's so many. I mean, it's like farm after farm after farm after farm after farm, and they're not all horse farms, but some of them have horses on them, and so a lot of the farmers are getting rid of the goldenrod, right? Because it's not good for the horses. So so there's not a lot of goldenrod in that area. So I don't end up.
Don't I mean, everybody talks about goldenrod, and I'll get a little bit of it around here, and the bees will get the pollen off of it in the fall.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you think that you're going to get any kind of a honey flow off of it, forget
Nope.
it.
You can forget it.
No, I mean, I agree, but what I'm saying is the fall options are limited, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
The best
But-
option is it's called a sugar water.
well, right. I mean, that's what that's
Or
what
Pro
I'm
Sweet.
doing, right? I feed them until they stop taking it. So
Yep.
But yeah, so that's kind of the update. So I went from 4 colonies to 17. Was not expecting those 2 swarms at all, but I mean, I saw this live with Tom and Melissa where JW was on there and he was talking about how his equipment, I guess it had been raining and stuff there or whatever, and a lot of his like farm equipment and stuff had been like sunk in the mud and stuff like that. And he had made this statement about how when it stopped raining, he was expecting half his apiary to be in the trees. And it was literally like 2 days later, I went to my apiary and there's like 2 swarms on the pole. I was just like, I wasn't expecting it at all. So I only had
JW, I
1.
think he got something like 12 inches of rain in just a few days.
Yeah. Well, and we had been getting at that same time, we had like 3 or 4 straight days of rain here. Right. So, and then like today, you notice I had like a hoodie on. Today it was only 53 degrees here. Right. Like that's a high. It's warm as it got today. It was really cold. So, but in any event, that's my update on it, so fingers crossed that the remaining colonies, but even I think there's only like 4 colonies that don't have queens yet, but they definitely had queen cells. So, there's a good likelihood that.
So have you got honey supers on everybody?
Yeah. So honey supers on everybody. Except for the packages, of course, but,
So these hives that don't have queens in them yet, are you making sure you're checking that, checking the brood box, make sure they're not honey bound?
yeah, so I've been checking that. I've been, I've been moving stuff around. I actually, I heard Charlie. I watched a replay or something on I think one of your lives, where you had mentioned about how the bees were not drawing foundation, but rather drawing comb towards the towards the empty frame next to them, rather than right.
I tried to put in like 2 empty frames and a honey super for them to draw that out.
Yeah,
It don't work. I
Right.
found out that it just does not work. It doesn't
Right.
work for me. It might work for Cayman. It doesn't work for me.
well,
I want to draw the honey super out. I either put it on top, like I got a nuke out there that, man, they are just packing the honey away, and I'll put a 5 frames of foundation.
yeah,
They'll draw it out and pack it full of honey,
right.
which is fine. I get the honey, I get the wax.
Yeah. Well,
And-
so I mean, I had always been told, checker those, with the
Checkerboard.
but
I
I
just-
actually learned, that actually I'm just going to put all those empties together in the middle.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, and
Well, I
get
mean,
them,
what I'm getting at is if it's a honey super, I'll just put 10 frames of foundation in there, let them go.
Gotcha. Right. Well, I mean, for the packages, what I was doing was I was putting those in there, obviously, and they're drawing them, they're going to draw some of them out, but then, but the ends are completely untouched. So I rotated those in. but not checkering them. I actually put them together to hope that, they'll actually draw them out. So I am going through and looking at that, and everything seems to be fine. I mean, like the honey I've moved as far as I can to the sides. And again, like if they don't successfully re-queen themselves, then I'll either buy queens or I'll throw eggs in there from one of the other colonies and let them try again. But, but at this point, most of them have done that. And, there's still, I think, enough time left to give those remaining colonies a little bit more time to see what happens with it. But,
you just have to, it's just like me. I mean, I'm hearing they're not making, I can see they're not making as much honey as like last year.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have issues, and it's like, stop, don't get upset. Just do the best you can and do the most you can do for them. And
I mean, this year was really, for me, this year was about growing my apiary to a point where I have more potential colonies to get through the winter so that I can come into spring of 26 with enough colonies that I think that I can get a more decent honey crop that year. So this year was really just about growth for me, and that's where I'm at. So I'm really happy. A little bit faster than I expected it to be, but again, I'm happy that that it is where it is. That's my goal. I'm meeting it. So, from here on out, I'm just going to manage the colonies moving forward and and see what happens. So
do what you can do.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, I was really, really happy that I was able to calm those bees down, because I did not want to bathe them in soapy water, but which was, of course, going to be my next step to do if they did not calm down. So, I mean, and I've dealt with the colonies like that before, and splitting them has always worked. I know that it typically does work in most cases, but so I was like kind of fingers crossed with this one.
Well, like Nancy said, just because you have that many now doesn't mean that's what you have to go into
Of course.
the winter with.
No, of course. Right. I mean, like, the same thing happened to me last year. I lost a few colonies in late September. It is what it is. But like I said, this year for me was about growth,
you succeeded with that.
Yes, and I've succeeded with that, so that I'm really happy with that at this point. So like I said, moving forward through the summer, it's just going to be managing them, trying to keep them, mite free, keep the mites down, keep them, producing bees and doing what they're doing, and we'll see what happens in the fall. But, like I said, that was really my goal, and that's what I wanted to do. The only other thing that happened to me that day was I had this, I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if this video will come up very well or not, but I have this video where I was walking. That's the small swarm, and I was walking around. Of course, I had gotten the queen in this one. I was going around to get some video of the bees marching into the colony. So, of course, I had gotten that, and, I was surprised at how much wax that they had left on the pole when they were just hanging out there initially. But so what had happened after that was I gave it maybe another 15 or 20 minutes. I went back over and checked it, and there was literally no bees on the front of that box like you could see in that video. They were all inside. There was none on the chloroplast that I had down there to help them kind of march in from the ground and stuff. They were completely in there, all ready to go. So I was like, great, time's perfect. Picked it. I still had that gate open there. I picked the box up, the nuke up, and I turned around and I started walking towards the apiary. And the next thing I know, I felt like I was being drop kicked in the middle of my back. It shocked and scared me all at the same time, because, in my brain, there was nothing that should have been happening there. And I turned around, and the rooster, which I have lovingly named Aloysius, right? So the rooster, who is totally going to give me post-traumatic stress disorder by the time this summer is over, right? He had literally came out of nowhere. I didn't even see him close by me. He'd come out, I guess, out of that wood pile there or whatever. chased me in.
He was hiding behind a fence post waiting for you to walk by.
Exactly, right? Now here I got these bees in my hand, and this rooster wants to like square up with me. I'm like, I don't know what.
Sounds like he squared up with you, all right?
Right, so I put the box down because obviously I didn't want to be dealing with the box in my hand and shake the bees all up and everything. So I put the box down and and just kind of like was ready for it. I think what I'm gonna do is I did some research on this. I don't have a lot of experience dealing with chickens, but I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back. I'm still gonna leave him alone, but the next time he tries to square up with me, I'm going to have to establish dominance on him, right? So I'm going to try to get a hold of him. I was read up on this, and there seems to be a lot of consensus about this. Get him by the neck and get him by the legs and pin him down and hold him down till they chill out. And that most of the time establishes for them that you are dominant over them, and they typically will leave you alone after that. So
when you hold him down, hold his head down, reach out in front of him and start at his beak and draw a straight line two or three times.
Okay.
And then you can let go of him.
All right. I'll give that a shot. I mean, hopefully I don't have to deal with him anymore, right? But I mean, like
you can always show him a hatchet.
So he always charges the fence. He's always on the other side of the fence from the apiary, and he always charges the fence at me. But I don't worry about it because we have the fence in between us. But this time he actually drop kicked me from behind while I was carrying a box of bees. I was like, holy crap.
I would have calmly set those bees down and I would have punted him in the next week.
Well, that's what I did. I mean, I put the bees down and then I was like, ready for him or whatever. And he just kept flying up in the air, right? And like coming back down and everything. And then finally.
Yeah, fighting cock. Sound like a fighting cock to me.
That's what he sounded like.
What his problem was, right? But finally, he just said, he turned around and he walked away. And I was like, cool, right? I don't have to deal with him anymore. But
he's got your number. He's got you pegged.
Right. So, I was telling the people who own the farm, I was like, you know what? I love farming and I love animals. And of course, I come from like generations and generations and generations of farmers. But these animals just don't seem to like me very much. So.
Yeah, that rooster would have been in the soup pot or on the grill or something like that.
Well, I mean, he's not my rooster, so but if he was my rooster, I probably would have kicked him pretty hard. But yeah. Anyway, so that was really kind of like the end of it all, and then I was able to get out of there. So I'm going back on Sunday to move the second of the swarms. I didn't have a lot of equipment with me. So I'm going back on Sunday to move the second of the swarms into a 10 frame, just because I don't want them to get too crowded in the 5 frame too quickly. I don't want them to split on me again real quick. So
are they still in the Pro Nuke?
They're out of the Pro Nuke. And in that swarm, which was where the Pro Nuke was in that picture, that was the much bigger of the 2 swarms. They're in a 10 frame, but the smaller frame is in a wooden 5 frame nuke. So I want to move them into a 10 frame box just so that they feel
if you want to draw wax, put another 5 frames of foundation on top.
Yeah.
Wax.
Yeah, I just want to. I don't want them to feel like they're overcrowded already. So I'm going to go back on Sunday and give them a 10 frame box, and then from there, as long as they haven't split on me yet, but chances are.
So, have you ever got any confirmation back from the health department?
No. So that was, and I was going to mention that too. I'm really, really disappointed in how slow that the Department of Ag is moving on this. I mean, obviously, I realize workflows and stuff like that. There's never any guarantee and stuff like that. They tell you as a good reference to make sure you submit your applications at least 60 days prior to whatever your target date is that you would like to go live with sales and stuff like that. I submitted my application way more than 60 days, probably more like 120 days. Still have not heard anything about it. Of course, I sent it certified mail, and I know it was received, and I know, that the documentation says that if it's approved, they'll send me an email, and then at that point, I need to make arrangements for the inspection. And they said, if it's not approved, I'll get a letter in the mail telling me what the deficiencies were that I can then correct and resubmit for, reconsideration. I haven't received either. So my assumption is that, and having worked for the state of Pennsylvania myself, and my wife works for the state of Pennsylvania, I just really feel like it's just comes down to, just the normal government bureaucracy will get to it.
You're going to have to reach out.
If it were me, I'd be calling them and say, well, since it's been over 120 days and I haven't heard anything from you, I'm going to assume that my application is approved and my go live date is tomorrow to sell honey.
Well, yeah, I mean, sure, right? Maybe, but I'm at the same time, I don't really want to irritate them either, since they're the ones making the decision about my application. So I don't really want to bother them.
Don't your wife know anybody? Got to pull some strings here.
I'm a little reluctant to say what our kind of secret game plan is, in a public forum, but I do have some inside tracks, and I still, like, I worked for the legislature, right? So not exactly the same department, not the same branch, right? Because the Department of Ag falls under the executive branch, and my wife works for the executive branch. So she works for revenue. But I still have some favors in, that I could call in if I needed to, but at the same time, I'm really just trying to sit it and wait it out and just let the bureaucracy play out and everything else. So, the other thing I wanted to mention too, I don't know if there are any Pennsylvania beekeepers. I know Nancy's in here. Oh, by the way, I saw you said hi, Nancy. Hi back. I wanted to say that I just got an email today from the Penn State Extension office that there's a webinar coming up in early June. And what they're going to discuss all the upcoming legislation, all the changes to the bee laws and stuff. There's a big, huge package trying to work its way through committee and through the Senate. Right now, it's a Senate bill. It's not a House bill. So there's a lot of changes they want to do here in Pennsylvania to the bee law. Unfortunately, probably not a lot of it is good for the beekeeper, but they really feel like
Chester County Bee Club talked about that.
Yeah, so there's a lot, and you just don't know what's gonna end up in the final bill. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, so there's a lot of people that are upset about it, but I've been trying to tell everybody, just try not to get so upset about it, because I worked for the legislature for many, many years. And I just know that the bill will undergo about a gazillion changes before it ends up going for the final, floor vote. So, there is going to be this webinar from the Penn State Extension, Beekeeping Extension, that they're going to discuss a lot of that, and you just register for it for free. And I think it's on June 3rd, but don't quote me on that. But if anybody is interested in even just, listening to the webinar or whatever, attending the webinar, you can register for it at the Penn State website. But it should be interesting. Again, they're not going to really, I think they're going to try to break a lot of it down and maybe try to explain a lot of it. Some of the things that I know off the top of my head is, like, some of the legislation says that if you're just not a beekeeper, if you're just a homeowner, you just own a house or own a property or something like that or whatever, and there's a swarm that has moved into your house, which would be kind of like a cutout situation, right? And you don't take steps. Again, I don't think this one's going to make it to the final bill, but some of the preliminary stuff was, if you don't take steps as a property owner to have that colony cut out of your property, you could be fined. And there's a big mandate for treatment. And there's a lot of Pennsylvania beekeepers that are diehard treatment-free beekeepers, that feel really strongly about, not treating their bees ever. And there's a lot of push in this, a lot of language in this bill that keeps surviving all of the committee and all of the, the rewrites where they really want to mandate treatment in Pennsylvania. And then another big thing too is right now we pay $10 every 2 years to register our apiary.
And they want to jack it up to $20. I think
they wanted. There's been some language that wants to jack it up as high as $50. Now, again, don't know if that will survive. Don't know what the final number will be when the bill finally, makes it through. But some suggestions were that they wanted to make it. And again, they said that because this money, this revenue is needed in order to not only fund the inspection efforts and fund that division of the Department of Ag that deals with beekeeping, but also to hire additional inspectors so that, because right now Pennsylvania doesn't have a lot of inspectors.
Read the comment that Angie just put up there. Rules that have no enforcement.
Of course. Right. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, a lot of people are really going back and forth. And like I said, I keep trying to tell everyone, you know what, try not to get upset about any of that, because at the end of the day, this bill is going to just keep being rewritten and rewritten and rewritten and rewritten, and stuff's going to be.
Yeah, but that's where the beekeepers all get their beekeeping suits and go to the legislature.
Well, and the state
and walk in carrying a new
association, the Pennsylvania State Beekeepers Association has been the principal consultants for the legislature on all of this stuff. So, and of course they're taking comments from their membership and stuff as well. So, all
right. Well, this is Pennsylvania problem. So we're done.
Right. Again, it's more Pennsylvania stuff, but, and I had mentioned this the last time I had talked about it. It really is unfortunate what Pennsylvania is doing, given that all of our surrounding states aren't doing even half of what we currently do, let alone what's trying to work its way through our legislature and become, like the new law of the land. So,
all right, enough politics.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'll agree with you there. I'm glad I don't live in Pennsylvania.
I am too.
All right, everybody. Well, I'm glad that you got 17 hives now.
Yeah, so like I said, my goal was to expand. I'm there. If I don't have another, if I don't have any more splits or any more, swarms, I'll be probably, perfectly fine with that. And then we'll just see how many actually end up, not only making it through the summer and into fall and into winter, but of course, coming out of winter is the big mystery. So. But that's the update. I just wanted to jump in and tell you guys about that. So, we'll see what happens with it from here. I've tried to do videos for my channel the last couple of times I was there, but my camera got swooped. I mean, this is the camera that I use. It's a DJI Action 4. There were literally like stingers sticking in like the record button anywhere that they could stick their butts in and sting. This thing was like covered in bees, and the video was literally unusable because there was just so many bees all over the lens and everything else. So I'm hoping the next time I go down there, I'm actually able to crank out another video, because the last one I've put out was in March, and I really need an update. So
all right, well, the main
Mr.
thing
Will.
is, remember when you're doing recording to put your lapel microphone inside your veil.
Oh yeah, right. So I have these like little like
Yeah, well,
PKI,
the bees hate those dead cats.
right.
Please put them
Yeah,
in
these
something.
are always inside my veil, clipped to my collar. So yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
So how's Will doing? Eating ice cream, are we? Did you get
Yep.
done
Yep,
wax
you
dipping
caught me.
tonight? Did you do some wax dipping?
Well, I finished putting together my nuke boxes that I flashed you a couple pictures at, those Rossmann boxes.
Yeah.
And I didn't fire the wax dipper up. I think I'm going to fire that up. I found some of that HDO plywood down in Baltimore. I'm going to get out and pick up some of that to make some migratory covers.
How much?
Well, it's supposed to be 20 1/4 by 8 feet, so they're cutoffs. Okay.
Oh,
But
okay.
they're $12 a piece.
That
And I
ain't
should
bad.
be able to get 4 out of each one. You know what I mean?
Making nuke lids?
No, I'm making deep lids. So it's the wrong way. You know what I mean? There's a lot of waste to it.
Yeah.
But I was looking for plywood to make. I was looking for cheap plywood to make, migratory covers out of, and this isn't cheap, but I'm hoping it's going to be pretty good.
I was gonna
stuff.
say nothing anymore is cheap.
Yeah.
So I've been looking for cheap stuff too, and it's all gone.
But yeah, so no, I've had a busy week. I got through all the package bees, and they're all, slabs of brood in them. I'm pretty happy. They're going to explode here next week. And I got through all the rest of my stuff. I got through my demeries. They're looking pretty good. Charlie, I probably should have thrown some. I was telling you those 2 colonies that I had put cell bars in, that I had tried to do some grafts in. I probably should have took the time yesterday and grafted some more and thrown in them, because the colonies just, each week they're getting bigger and bigger. But I didn't.
yeah.
I'm going to wait. I got too many irons in the fire with stuff right now. So.
Yeah, Minnesota Mike, ground moisture. We just got some rain, much needed rain. Last Saturday, and then we got a really nice heavy rain last Saturday for about an hour, and then we got some rain last night until about by noon. It was kind of over with. It kind of drizzly but nice slow rain, so things are better. I mean, it is, as I call it, the locust rains. As soon as locust blooms, here comes all the rain and all that. So hopefully we'll get a few more good days here, and then we got a few more days of rain next week. But hopefully it won't knock the blossoms off, and bees will get in there and get all the nectar out as possible. So anyway, so you're back up to speed, Will, as far as the amount of hives you got and they're growing.
Yeah. Yep. Things are doing good. I pulled all my zombie queens out, and I have them sitting in little nukes that I'm just going to kind of use them as backups or resource hives. So I feel really good about that. And I'm getting ready. I kind of had all those packages and all my small stuff real close to me here on my neighbor's. He's got a pretty nice area to lay bees down in.
There's JT right there for Will.
Yeah.
And Brian with Castle Hives, I watched his video today. He's in on the night. And looks like he's dropped some packages. The bees are doing well for him right now. They're drawing wax out and doing quite well.
I was really surprised how many colonies he lost over the winter, Brian.
He pretty much lost everything.
Yeah.
He used some of 21st Bee, sent him some frames, and he did feed his hives with sugar water, which they're drawing the wax out quite well. Mine are not. They're drawing wax out. They're drawing the wrong kind out. I'll have to, like I say, I just have not had time to get in to really do some more scrutinizing in, investigations and stuff. So anyway, that's what's happening. Where'd Will go? There he is.
I'm here.
Hey, Will, vendor registration for Nobby opens up July 1st.
Yeah, I saw. Boy, that's coming in a hurry, isn't it? I think
Isn't it though?
each year they get more organized and
Yep.
making stuff available
We
soon.
got Chris out there running the thing, getting it all done.
Yeah, he's kind of hired full time to be working on this, I guess, right?
You did.
Yeah. Yep. He works for Cayman full time now.
There's
That's cool.
Brian.
Hey, Brian.
You have to turn your boy or there you go.
Gonna load up my truck and then join you guys. I figured I'd let you join along.
Okay. Get ready for another weekend show, I guess.
That's right. I take away all my bee stuff. It goes on this side of the garage on Friday afternoon, and on that side of the garage, all my market stuff is. So you just switch it out, and then Sunday afternoon, I'll switch it out again.
Sounds like a
Don't
new
even
truck
make
to me.
myself, but I'm listening while I'm packing up.
Sound like a second truck in the works to me.
Yeah, tell that to Jen.
All right.
Or a big steak body truck, right?
I don't know. But did some of that comb work out for you?
Absolutely. I've used I got about 20 pieces out so far, and I'm gonna get into a bunch of it here next week. I think I'm gonna do a bunch of splits, and I'm probably gonna go through another 60 pieces of it. So I'll be getting it pretty, getting it used up, getting it out there, working, do some good, get bees on it.
Getting it working for you.
Yeah, I'm completely out of comb now. So all I have is foundation left now with all these splits I've done.
Yeah, Charlie, we were talking about how much honey I made on average per hive last year.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what hurt me, and it's going to end up hurting me some this year too. Is I didn't have a lot of drawn comb, so that definitely put a dent. You know what I mean? In like my average amount of pounds per hive for sure, and it's going to have some effect this year too. But
and then
James,
and then sometimes you end up with that colony like the one that I have down there, right? Gave them just all foundation, and they drew it out, filled it, and capped it in like almost 3 weeks.
James, if you can, come on in. Give us an update of what's happening up in Canada.
I mean, if they can all be like that, it'd be great.
See what's happening with your bees, or are you rebuilding and stuff like that. So, but I don't know. The honey's coming in, and I'm keeping up with it. And Will came down a week ago or so. I guess it was. Yeah,
it was about a week ago. Yeah,
and something I kind of learned, or finally came to, like putting honey supers on. I'm putting, let's say, one at a time on, and I got to the point where last year I experimented under super, over super, and I'm like, which one's the best? Well, then I've also read an article on ABJ that it really didn't matter, and that's kind of what I found. And so this year I said over super, like all the commercial guys, just stack it on top. And what's happening is that's another time saver there, where number one, you don't have to take them supers off the bottom and put something underneath, which is a pain in the back. And when you lift the one up that you got on there, let's say super number one, all right, it's heavy. You don't have to look at the frames, just do it by weight. If it's really heavy, put another super on. And when you come back in a week or so later, depending on how the flow is, pick that one up. Is it heavy? Yeah. Okay. Well, you don't have to worry about the one on the bottom. You already know where that's at. And then just keep stacking another one on top. And it just saves so much. And I found that, in essence, that bees work from the top down, especially with these demeries. They'll put more nectar up in that top brood chamber if you let them. That's why I usually have foundation up there. And if my brood isn't ready in the bottom, I will pull them brood frames out of that top box and put them off to another box just to set them outside, until I need them. And if they got a little bit of nectar, let the bees rob it out. And that's kind of how I've been doing it. I've had some people here, like the one club that me and Nancy used to blog to. They're talking about, pulling honey, well, it's about, I don't know, three quarters or half capped up on top, and I'm like, what was the darn moisture content at that? And it's like, they said they put some fans on it, so they must have dehydrated it some, and they got it down to like 17 and a half, which is fine. But I don't know. I mean, do you guys do it that way? Or I stack them and pack them until about July. And then usually by that time, our flow is normally in normal years over with. And then that's when I check them and harvest. Or do you guys pull it off as you're going along?
Yeah, I stack them and pack them, stack them and rack them too.
Yep.
I mean,
I don't see where, I've looked in the hives, it'll be, take them till July in order to cap that stuff over.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't get really any last year, and I'm not expecting a lot this year. But before, like when I used to keep bees here at my house, most of the time, by the first or second week of July, I mean, I try to keep them on there until they were completely capped. If there were a few frames that weren't, like, say, capped at the bottom, but they were
I get that.
I mean, I would just check the moisture. As long as it was, good, I would just take them. So
Now, Nancy says about running the uncapped through the freezer. What's the freezer got to do with it? I don't quite understand that. Will the freezer draw the moisture out or something?
I don't know. You can take uncapped honey and dry it out as well with a dehumidifier in the room.
I did that. I did that with about 20 supers, and they were only I don't know, 3/4 of the way capped. So I put them down in the room down there where we extract, and put a dehumidifier on and blew fans down through them like those box fans. Just set them on top, staggered, stacked them, put a fan up on top, and let that run down there. I let that run down there for like 2 weeks, and I know you guys won't believe me, but I was seeing like 15%. I don't know how we extracted it. You know what I mean? I couldn't get to it. I was worried because it wasn't capped. And I just left it down there, sealed up tight with a dehumidifier on it and those fans, and it really knocked it down.
Look at this, Will. And I think I know what he's saying there. You got to wait 4 or 5 days for them nurse bees to come up and cover that stuff, since you maybe not had brood up in the top end. And then put your graft in there and kill the queen cells if there's happen to be any cells at 4 or 5 days. And I had thought about that when I put that. Brian, I put a grafting frame in right after I had put brood upstairs, and bees had come up and got around the brood area a little bit, but definitely wasn't enough bees up there. I think you're right there. I need to wait several days before you do all that.
Yep.
So move the brood, or move up what you're going to move up, let it go 4 days, and then go back in and try and do those grafts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it gives time for those bees to populate all that.
Yep. And to figure out that they're queenless up there.
And then here's Brian's second comment. They need to be hopelessly queenless too, like a cell builder.
Yep.
They got to get that in their head, I guess you would say.
Yep. And it does take it takes 4 or 5 days for them to realize they're queenless. Then they'll be looking for the cells to draw out.
Another experiment.
Charlie, did you tell me you threw some? You did some grafting?
I threw some in, and I threw it in there right after I had put brood upstairs.
Oh,
and
okay.
they never touched the frame. So it was about an hour or two later. I figured, well, let me check to see whether or not I got any population on there. Nothing. It was nothing
Yep.
on there. Pulled that frame up. I'm in a hurry. I've got a queenless nuke over here, and I throw it in the bottom of that. The first thing came to my head when I did do that. And they've been queenless for a while, a week at least. Is that it's been 2 hours since I've grafted, and is the larvae dried up and dead?
Yep.
And I think that's what happened. I'm pretty much sure that's what happened. And when I came back from Georgia, I checked them, and sure enough, like you said, they had cleaned themselves out, polished them all up, maybe put a little bead of wax around the little edge of the cup, and that is it.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm figuring on throwing them right. I'm figuring on grafting into them because I do think they cleaned them. You know what I mean? Because there's no larvae that I grafted in the bottom of them, and they just look great. So
Yeah, they cleaned them up.
yeah,
And
the experiments will continue.
Yep. And I would graft on the 4th day, Charlie.
Yeah. Right.
And then put them in.
Yeah. Yeah, Brian. Me and Will were out there that day, and we found some really nice, solid frames of pollen. Yeah. And we actually we took them out of the brood chamber, put them upstairs. And I made a little P or note on top of the hive that they were there at this, so I could go right to them and find them. So I could put pollen on both sides of that graft. But I think the key is that, Brian, is that got to wait till that 4th or 5th day, then put that frame in upstairs to see whether it's going to work.
Yeah.
Well,
so
we're
Mike
supposed to go in every 7 days. 7 days after we're supposed to go in 7 days after we move brood up for queen cells, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 or 6 days ought to be the queen cells. And then Mike here talked about mentioning OA combined with another treatment resulted in higher caloric. I don't know whether it's higher caloric acid or not.
It's a form of acid. If you mix OA with Apigard, which is thymol, it changes the oxalic acid vapor to a different type of acid. What type of acid, I don't know, but you're not supposed to mix them because it is poisonous at the point.
Yeah, Bob kind of talked about that in one of his videos.
Bob Biddy, Mike was the one who was talking about that. Yeah. He was stating you can do OA first, isn't it? And
yes, you do the OA first, and once the OA dissipates, then you can put the Apigard on.
Right.
But if you've got Apigard on, and then you do OA after, that's when you get that.
You have to wait for the Apigard to diminish quite a bit.
Yeah.
Before you can do that.
Yep.
And then we got somebody new here, I think. Pennsylvania. Okay.
Yeah, they call it like the backwoods parts of Pennsylvania. They call it Pennsylvania.
I thought that was over here in Cecil County, Maryland. It was Cecil, Tucky over that way. But yeah, welcome. And we're just hanging out here talking bees. If you want to jump in, there's the link on the top up there, as long as you got a video. And we're mostly sideliners sideliners and some commercial folks. Yep. James, are you still on here? I want to see you. Come on here now. You having to give us an update up there in British Columbia, or
what's going on in Canada?
What's going on in Canada? Not British Columbia, but Alberta. And all that. Well, Pennsylvania, where are you at? What county, you are.
What part of Pennsylvania are you in?
In the west or north or whatever. We got several people in Pennsylvania here.
Scott, we always joked that it was Philly on one side, Pittsburgh on the other, and Alabama in the middle.
Right. So my wife got me this shirt and I'm trying to think of it from memory, right? But it basically has Pennsylvania sectioned out.
Bedford. He's out there
so-
when the plane crash was.
And then
Yeah.
so it's basically just like most of the middle, it says on the shirt, it says Mountains and Hicks. And then there's a little circle around Hershey with an arrow, and it says Hershey Annex on it and stuff like that. So, but otherwise, it just mostly, like I said, in the middle, it says Mountains and Hicks. So,
Minnesota beekeeper guy. I think Bob taught. It's one of Bob's videos where he's talking about treatment, and he was using Apiguard, and he described it as there was some type of synergistic reaction with oxalic acid, and
I think it was the one he was doing oxalic
doing
acid
Apiguard.
treatment in December, I think it was.
Oh,
And he was commenting on the fact that they had 0 mites so many months ago, and now we're picking up 2s and 3s. I think that was the one. It was, I don't know. It was probably, it had to be a December film of last year. Yeah, Lisa's down there in Alabama. Here comes Mr. Brian. I gotta get a drink. I'll be back.
and I've been going back through the chat, and I'm not trying to start anything back up again or whatever. I just wanted to say, based on what I was saying in the chat, I didn't mean to upset anybody about all the government talk and stuff like that or whatever. I just thought it was important for Pennsylvania beekeepers to stay up because there's a lot of changes coming and we're all going to be impacted by it. So I just wanted to kind of draw awareness to it that Penn State is going to do a webinar about it, but I certainly didn't want to upset anybody. So I apologize to anyone that I might upset about all of the government talk. So
Hi, everybody.
hey,
hi, Brian.
Hey. How's it going? So
good, welcome.
I won't go there. So, Scott, that was really exciting to hear about your growth this year. I think Nancy kind of hit my sentiment on the head. You know, don't be so focused on numbers, right? Your apiary is going to expand and contract with the season. Right now, everything's exploding.
Yeah.
Don't be one of those eager beekeepers that gets focused on a number. You know, fall's a great time to think about combining colonies and picking good queens and bad queens and choosing. And it's easy to get lost in a number, but my experience has been if you focus on healthy colonies, those numbers are going to grow pretty naturally.
Well, right. And I mean, like I said, my intention wasn't to grow the way I did. It's certainly not for the numbers that I did. But I mean, when you get into your colonies and they're overflowing with bees and they're creating swarm cells, I mean, you've got only one option. You either split them or you're going to lose them. You know,
it's fun to ride the wave of the spring energy of beekeeping.
Right. So that's really why my numbers exploded. I wanted to grow a little bit. I bought 4 packages. That honestly was all I had intended to go to, from 4 to 8, really. You know, possibly another. I mean, I was anticipating a split or 2, not 11.
Sure.
So, you know, that's what it came down to for me. So
right on.
So, Brian, what's happening with you all? I know you're starting your market season, and I know that I think this year was a big growth year for you too, I think.
No, this is my first year where I'm not growing. No, I'm at that place where I'm finally maintaining. So that's a different place to be in for me. So that's nice. I did have some, I wouldn't say bad losses over the winter. I went from about 75 to about 50, but I'm already, and I run about 50 production colonies and 25 like support colonies. My 50 production colonies are already back rocking and rolling. I've got, I don't know how many splits out and about in my different apiaries. So I'm like Scott. I'm riding that energy of the spring and what it gives me, and I'll let it grow as it's growing naturally. And as I don't know what it's like for you guys, but when our flow stops, it stops. It's not like it kind of trickles away. It stops on a dime. So that changes my management purposes tremendously. So at that point, I'm looking at picking good queens. I'm looking at using those small colonies to requeen my production colonies that I think might have problems or fizzling out or something. And then I'm trying to get those colonies, because one of the problems you have in the fall is those small colonies get picked on. And if you consolidate them pretty quickly, that's a great defense against that robbing behavior in your apiary, just by giving them better numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fun to ride that wave. But I always tell people your apiary should expand and contract with the seasons, just like a colony's population. That's part of the natural growth of an apiary. And if you know how to work your bees, that's actually to your benefit. So you're not doing so much in the winter, tending so many colonies going into winter or through the winter, but you still know how to take what you got coming out of the winter and get to where you're at with your goals.
I mean, I'd say that our nectar flow cuts off fairly abruptly as well, except for last year. Last year, it seemed to go all the way through to the end of summer. So
yeah,
at least in my yard, it did. So.
Yeah, I mean, around here, it was normally it cuts off around the 4th of July over the years.
Mm-hmm.
But last year it went through the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether that's, I don't think the spotter and lanternfly the last year, you hardly seen any of them around. So I don't think that was a problem. So
we don't get much of a fall flow or nothing nothing much for the beekeeper. Anything that's out there is really for the fall bees and, helping them get ready for winter.
Yeah, I would never take, personally, I don't like the smell of fall honey. So I don't typically go for it myself. But.
Well, that's a win-win. Russell, our flow typically ends somewhere in mid-July. Last year was July 3rd.
Yeah, ours is usually done right around June 30th.
Okay.
I mean, in past years for me, sometimes it was June to 20th. And then last year, honey was still wet. It's still coming in. I didn't quite realize it. I started spinning honey off. I probably could have put at least another. I did put a third brood chamber back on, and then within a week or two, it was filled full of honey.
Yeah.
I should have kept the darn queen excluders on there, and I probably could have got an extra, at least a couple 100 pounds more.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm going to see whether or not that happens this year.
Charlie, I meant to say something to you when you were talking about it earlier. I read that same article about over and under supering, and it just seemed to make sense. I mean, we all know the bees have this tendency to move up, so it just seems logical that over supering seems more appropriate.
Yeah, I just never thought that they would. You would think that they would want to go to the most quickest spot to put honey in.
Yeah, right.
If the super above it was full of nectar, you would think that they would want to go to that one right there, available quick. And closer. Yeah. But actually, it's the other way around. They'll go up to the next one and put it up top.
Yeah, and if you're somebody who doesn't like to use queen excluders or whatever, that having that kind of like finished one under, gives that queen barrier for you as well. So
supposedly.
Well,
supposedly,
I got it. Right.
Sure. All I can say is there's some folks that did that, and the darn queen went through 4 or 5 full supers and still was laying brood at the top.
Right. That's one of the great things. I mean, that's one of the fascinating things about them. As soon as you think they make a liar out of you. So.
Yep.
So I do that, and it usually works. My biggest problem is when it's time to harvest, you have to be careful because that queen could be in there. So
Yeah.
using something like the blower right from the beginning is not a good idea. So it changes how you would harvest your supers based on that possibility that she's in there.
And I had that problem that last hive down on the row out there. I blew the super out and we put it on the truck. And I had Scott, who was my neighbor who helps me, and he has bees now too. And he see me go down on my legs or knees on the ground, and I'm over on the ground. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "See this little pile of bees right here? Yeah." I said, there's probably a queen in there.
Yeah.
And sure enough, there's my queen.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, she had gotten upstairs.
Yep.
And then that's when I started. Oh, there's some brood up here. You know, she got up there.
That's
So-
lucky you found her.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just using fume boards, which are, for me.
We all do that too.
Yeah, extremely.
But to use a fume board, there's always those dozen stragglers on
Yeah.
there.
You always
So
use
you
the
raise
blower
that-
after
you-
the fume
you-
board.
Fume board it, you raise it up, and I got that little Milwaukee hand blower, you zzz, like that, and then
Right.
put it on the truck.
Yep.
Yeah, I've always had really good success with I use Honey Bandit. So
And all. But yeah, I use fume boards. I like
surprised I had to supply my driver's license because it's apparently regulated by the DEA. Honey Bandit.
What?
Yeah, so when I bought it, I had to give them a copy of my driver's license. I bought it from Man Lake, and Man Lake said that it's regulated by the DEA, and I had to provide my driver's license, and they keep it on file in case the DEA ever asks for the IDs
What
of
about that, Bill?
who bought it.
Hold on.
I mean, you sell.
I'm just telling you what they told me, and they would not complete my order until I sent them a copy of my driver's license. So
Yeah, I know, but Bill sells the kind that I use. I forget what it's a brown bottle.
Honey be gone.
Honey be gone.
yeah,
Yep, that's the kind of thing that would make me want to think about a different product.
No, Honey Bandit is not regulated by the DEA. The DEA's primary focus is enforcing controlled substance laws. And Honey Bandit is a beekeeping product, not a controlled substance. Man Lake states that they require a photo ID for shipping purposes due to the high concentration of the active ingredient, but
gotcha.
it is not related to DEA regulations.
Okay. Well, whatever
that's
it was,
why
I know that they would
why
not
I don't like to
ship it
buy
to me
Man Lake
until I
anymore.
gave them my driver's license, and they told me that it was required by the DEA.
Mm.
No.
That's why I kind of shun away from Man Lake most anymore,
Yeah.
if I can. So anyway,
Well, if Martin's would sell more than just woodenware, I'd buy it from them.
They do sell more than just woodenware.
Well, I mean, to an extent. I mean, you've seen that little shelf in there with some stuff on it or whatever, right?
I go up there all the time.
Right.
You have to ask for what you want.
Yeah.
so Brian, you've got your shows
Mhm.
and your wax, and you're doing creamed honey still, and all your infused honey and your runny honey. And you're, like you say, around 50 some hives or so. And I know you got different out yards. Are you still doing what do you call it? Beekeeping services for other people?
Yep, I do management services for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 folks. I was at one of those yards today, actually. I sell a lot of nukes. I started checking my nukes. It is weird. They're all over the place, from capped brood to like just polishing off the cells for the new queen. So they're all over the place. But I started checking my nukes. I got I don't know how many nukes I got out and about. I got 45 in my backyard, and then as many tucked into every corner I have in my other apiaries. But
45 in your yard in the town there? Because from what I can gather from your videos, you're pretty compressed, as far as neighbors.
it's suburbia. Yeah, I have almost a half of an acre, so I do have a pretty big backyard. But
Okay.
it's a little bit crowded for a couple of months. You know, maybe 6 weeks in the spring, it gets really, really tight. And then the nukes that I sell get sold out. And then everything else gets compressed down to like, I'll raise queens. I'll use them as mating nukes. There'll be support colonies for my production colonies.
Are you grafting, Brian?
Yeah, it's a goal that often gets thrown to the bottom of the priority list. And here I am again at that same place. But I might be doing it again this year. I had a problem with an order for some queens that was supposed to be coming in that kind of helped me procrastinate my grafting. So I might be kind of reinvesting in the grafting time. And I'll tell you guys about that in the green room. That's part of the reason I wanted to come on. I wanted to bend your ear about my experience trying to bulk order queens. Yeah, I'm sure you have something to say, Bill, because you were one of the people I actually almost called.
That's definitely a Bill question there.
Because I called around and I talked to a bunch of people about my frustration, and you were one of the people I considered calling because I know you've got tons of experience ordering queens.
Yeah, if you're not a regular customer,
I get it.
Not gonna get them.
I get it. I'm a nobody. So here, let's ask a general question. Say I'm an average Joe beekeeper and I want to order 100, 200, 300 queens. What do you recommend to that beekeeper? Mated queens. Let's start there. Mated queens.
Well, first thing is you just don't wait till you need them. You're going to have to order months and months in advance.
Or years in advance. You're going to have to get on. There's some breeders that require at least 2 years in advance placing that order. There are some that'll do it what they call short notice, which is 6 months. Others, if you're not a regular customer, you can forget it.
What does someone who's not a regular customer do to become a regular customer?
You have to get in with I got to know a guy who knows another breeder.
Yeah.
And you need to become friends with them and have them introduce you to them to be able to establish a rapport with them through this other person.
Okay.
And then you can order, queens, but you're going to go on a waiting list.
Sure. Now here's another. First of all, thank you, Bill. I appreciate.
Where are you getting what state were these queens coming from?
California. Most of the queens we get here in Colorado are from California, just for proximity. Just like you guys on the East Coast, most of your stuff is from Georgia, Florida, kind of. Mm-hmm. Most of our stuff is from California.
We get our early spring queens before we can start grafting. We get them from California.
Okay.
So, I've got a shipment coming from California next week. Now I'm only getting 35. But I ordered them, but I ordered them 5 months ago.
Yeah. Brian, I'm trying to have a conversation without talking about specific people or companies. I'm just trying to look for general advice for anybody out there wanting to go this route. And that's part of what I kind of knew going into this, Bill. I know who am I? I'm nobody. And I know timing is part of it and demand is part of it. And one of my wonders was, is this the worst year to try to get on someone's list because of all the die off and everybody struggling with trying to make up everything? So
it's been really hard this year to get queens.
Yeah.
Even out of California because of the die off. Everybody's trying to replace bees.
Now, I'm a conference goer. I'm also the kind of guy I'm also a state rep as the vice president. So I feel like I can put that hat on and go up to someone at a conference and be like, hey, this is what we're trying to do in Colorado. Where would be good places to go to? What are the right conferences to show up to?
You want to go to ABJ or
ABF?
Yeah.
ABF.
Well, that's not going to work this year, Charlie. You know that.
Not American Beekeepers Better. No, not that one.
You're talking about the honey producers?
It's the American. It's
HAP or whatever it's called.
It's
It'll be in Tampa, Florida this year.
Yeah, and then there's American Queen Breeders Association. I think is what it's called as well.
Do they have an annual conference, or is that part of another conference?
I don't know.
Like, you know how ABF is like different conferences, like sub conferences as
Yeah,
well.
I've never been to that one.
Yeah, because the way we'll talk some more in the green room. I'm not going to go into it here. We'll talk in the green room.
You're awesome. Will, do you have any other tips or experiences to share?
Man, I'm not running at your level. If I, ordering hundreds of mated queens is a whole nother animal. But again, I got 35 coming in next week from California. And then the second week of June, I got another 40 coming, out of California. I picked up 10 locally last week, and I probably could have picked up 50, from a local guy here in Pennsylvania. But again, those are two different places where I've been buying queens, you know what I mean, for at least the last 2-3 years.
So Will, how long in advance did you have to place your order for the ones from California?
No, I ordered them about 5 months ago.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So Brian, at the time, I
So you're
hopped
talking
on
December, Will?
website.
Like December of last year?
Well, it was probably January-ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
they
you
actually
gotta
have amounts
remember,
available.
the longer you've been ordering these queens from these people, like the first time you order, you may be on a year-long waiting list. It gets shorter. Like Will's down to 5 months.
Yeah.
So the next time he orders, it may be 3 months.
All right. Sorry for
Because he's ordering on a consistent basis.
I could make a contact, and as long as you don't mind a Georgia or a South Carolina queens.
Well, that's part of the issue too. I can get queens. I don't want any queens. I'm trying to do something here in Colorado to change the genetics that we have here. And that's part of what's been hard too, is these aren't all queens for me. Most of them aren't for me. I'm trying to preferred genetics to local Colorado beekeepers, because most local Colorado beekeepers, you can't get 5 of them. You can't get 2 of them. You can't get 3 of them. So I was trying to be the state rep to organize a big order, throw some clout around, at least by having a fairly large order and saying I'm doing this for the state. And I've gotten, it's been a very challenging for me,
Brian,
for sure.
I would almost say that if you're trying to do that, you need to be scheduling it now roughly for next year.
That's part of what I'm hearing in this conversation, Will. And that's why I appreciate all this. That's why I love this group, is when you have a problem and you're stuck on something, you can throw an idea out there. And this is kind of what I did all day long. I went around calling people locally, just trying to bounce this problem off of people whose opinions I respect. And here I am doing it with this group too. So again,
and with what you're saying, you've probably got maybe 3 places you want to buy queens, maybe 2, maybe 1. If you're looking for something specific, you need, that you're threading the needle, making it extra hard, because
you're absolutely right.
If you want to get Willie's queens because they're a special Russian something that's going to do great, you need to get your communications rolling. Now. You know what I mean? Way ahead of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will say this, and I'll finish this conversation later. How many queens are you looking for?
I was looking at 200, Bill.
How soon do you want them?
Our order was May 21st. Yeah.
Would that be May 21st, 2027?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking
this conversation is leading to, Scott, for sure. Yeah, but here's my problem. Here I am as a state rep, and I'm ready to formulate an email saying, sorry, folks, it fell through. Those queens I was trying to get for you aren't going to happen this year.
Don't send that email yet.
No, I hear you, Bill.
Let me make a phone call tomorrow.
But let's keep going in the green room, though, before we decide any future steps.
Yep.
And I'm trying to be respectful to everybody here by just trying to have a general conversation. that could help any of our listeners out there that might be thinking of doing this down the road, just by tapping into everyone's experiences and thinking about how to do this for themselves.
Yeah, because I mean, like when my friend Lloyd, he orders packages, he orders nukes, he orders queens.
Yep.
And what I was getting at is that he's ordered, it's like, how many nukes or how many packages do you need? Well, we got them this month, but that was ordered like you
6 months
say, the
ago.
first of the year.
Yeah.
I
This is
get
a general amount of packages. Of course, now he's been doing it for years and years, 30 some years. So they kind of got an idea of how many he's probably going to be getting.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with another queen / nuke producer in South Carolina. Like you say, it's so many months in advance and, and that kind of a thing. So
Talking about where the bees are at a little bit. Now, I took my first trip to Georgia with one of my commercial guys up here, and he was trying to add some packages, in different trips, add some nukes, add some queens, and they flat out just didn't have it for some of that. I mean, they couldn't. He called, we were on our way down, and he was getting calls, and he's like, hey, can I get another 100 packages? And between, I'm not going to mention any names, but between those two package providers, queen sellers that we were going to in Georgia, they couldn't fill it.
No, because they're
I think they had a tough year,
scheduling
too.
you like us. We got like 150 nukes or packages. I mean, all right, you can pick these packages up on this day because they're going to go out and shake. They know what they need to shake down on Monday or whatever day it is.
Right.
And they might have an order ahead of you that they need 800 of them. And that's average. That's not a big order. I mean, for them, it's a big order, but it's nothing extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll take so many days to shake those many bees. And then and also in the meantime, down there where we go, you got the ones that do the shaking and ones that do the queen picking. And they pick the queens today, and they need X amount of queens in a cage sitting on the shelf in the office for Tuesday. And then when they go out to shake bees on Tuesday, they take those queens with them and shake bees and put that queen in there and nail the package to, they have the juice cans with them and everything. Everything's made out in that package is completely assembled in the field. Queens, juice can, the whole 9 yards. They got an air stapler right there.
We had a question in the chat there, but Brian, what flavor bee are you looking for, queen wise?
Yeah, I don't want to get too specific there, Will, because
Okay.
I think that would kind of give away
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Mike Minnesota Beekeeper was asking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I appreciate everyone's suggestions about all these different places to get queens, but that's part of the issue here. It's like we went out to the Colorado community. What are you looking for? This is what we're looking for, and that's what I went to go try to get. So
Yeah.
it might be a hard sell to do a switcheroo on them. So yeah, that's kind of why I'm being a little bit vague, because if I were specific about that, I'd probably give away.
Well, I think what it amounts to is like Bill says, you kind of have to work a year in advance.
Yeah. If you're unless
When it comes to when you come to go to your people, say, okay, people, what do you need? And it's going to take us next year to kind of get all this set up.
yeah, but see here the thing with the genetics and the bees, you may have to accept part of what genetics you want at first until you can work into with that breeder the set of genetics that you're looking for. You know what I mean?
So you're saying get my foot in the door by ordering the ordinary queens?
No,
So-
I'm not.
Okay.
they're going to ask you what you're looking for as far as genetics go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're going to ask you if you're looking for Italians, Carnies, Russians, or Caucasians. And very few people are selling Saskatraz anymore, but it's those 4 that people look for. And if you get them with a Poline dealer, which a Poline queen was bred for pollination.
Yep. I'm familiar with the pole line.
Yeah.
We actually have a gal in one of our clubs who brings in pole line queens through,
Yeah.
I think it's the Lambs out of Texas.
Yep.
And she's been doing that for 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah. There's 3 or 4 Poline breeders around, and you got to be picky and choosy when you start dealing with Poline breeders.
Okay. Now let's switch gears a little bit. What if I wanted to bulk order queen cells? Is that something that people do? Is that something that would be a pickup only?
They don't ship well. They don't ship well.
Okay.
I have not heard of any of that.
No, they don't ship well because if they harvest them too soon, if you shake that cell, move that cell, or if it falls over, it's done.
Yeah.
And so they don't ship well. Now, people will ship virgins so you can breed to the drones in your area.
Yeah.
If that's something that you want to do and the genetics that you want to keep. But it's kind of a crapshoot.
We're in a place here in Colorado where we're almost a geographical island. We're so far from California. Everything north and south of us is so not populated. Anything to the east of us is so far. So if I want to get queen cells, to drive to a place to get queen cells, that's just not possible for someone like me.
So,
well, and then if you're trying to get certain genetics too,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
So my suggestion would be, as a general suggestion, is the genetics you want, right?
Yes.
Find somebody that you're happy with. Number one, talk to them, have that extended conversation about, okay, how can I get these genetics from you? As soon as they say no, don't give them a chance to say but. Say, okay, thank you for your help. I appreciate it. Move on to the next one. When you find somebody that answers you immediately, yes, I can do that, that's the one you want to deal with.
Thank you.
But in the beginning, to get your queens and get your area started with fresh genetics in the area, you may have to bite the bullet and only get one of the set that you want. One part of the genetics that you want.
Okay.
And then the next year, bring in a different line of queens that has maybe 2 or 3 of the set that you want. And then eventually, you get all those queens are flooded in your area, you will end up with the genetics that you want, because then there's going to be crossbreeding taking place. And they're going to breed those genetics into each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another way to do it. But we'll talk some more later about specifics.
Charlie, you going to put out more videos from your visit? I was loving that guy, whoever that was, pulling queens. That was awesome.
That's all I got. I did a pretty good one about a year or so ago, the Georgia trip. But yeah, they were doing, he was pulling Italians on that row of queens. And that's the thing. One row will be Italians. The next row might be Russians. They do have color designations for queen cup or cell cup designation for that. And they do Russians down there, and they do Italian. And some of the Italian, he was showing me there, the owner, he said, now this one here was a real black striped one. And then there was another one was kind of had a little bit more brown, I'll say a yellowish brown. And the black ones seemed to be the ones that were really doing some laying in them little frames. and stuff. But they didn't, some of them had some slab brood frames and some of them did. I said, well, what's the deal here? He said, well, let's say if this one had the last queen laid up a whole frame, well, that frame's going to be left in there. So it repopulates itself with fresh nurse bees. And he says, this new queen that comes in might not have all the open area to lay in. So she might look like she's spotty brood, but that was all she had to lay in and stuff like that. So it's a lot of different things. And then there was one comment, were they proven queens? Well, yeah. I mean, I seen some hives, they never made it back from their mating flight. And then some of those queens, we had a couple of them there that he said, well, that's no good. And I said, what's that? He said, see there, that wing isn't developed just quite right. And he would pinch her there or a leg or something like that. And then, or one just didn't seem to, if they don't get bred in that certain time, they don't wait around. They pinch them and go on for a new one. So there is, some Q&A there. And then I went over there to Bo's area where he was doing the Italians, where they were really plopping out some really heavy duty brood. And they'll do like one little nuke area. It needs a little more injection of bees, and they'll say, hey, anybody got a frame of, like, say, cap brood? And they'll say, yeah, let's swap an empty for a cap. So this one, they maintain that population of nurse bees in there and stuff. But it's amazing, down there where they're at, that's I call it pole country, where they're growing. Their crop is trees.
Yep.
They're growing telephone poles.
Mm-hmm.
And like one guy, he said, yeah, there's one guy owns 7,000 acres of trees. That it's all about cutting them down every 15 years or so. And we're going out to this country road, and he's slowing down. And where are we doing? Oh, there's this little hole in the, a little road, dirt road, and go back and you drive right inside that little area there. And here's 500 to 1,000 two queen mating boxes, sitting in between the rows of the trees. And then they'll have a group of 4 or 5 hives that are got lots of drone frames in them, and they're saturating that area with drones for mating purposes and stuff. And then they'll have, we've never been to the shaking yards. I presume that's because of insurance reasons. And we're talking 6,000 to 8,000 beehives just to shake. And then most of their yards are 50 to 1,000, or not 50, but 500 to 1,000 mating boxes in there. And they're all two queens per hive. And then grafting, I asked them, they're grafting 1,200 cups a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, they produce some queens.
Well, they're doing 1,200 cups a day. It's what they graft. Lisa and Mr. Hardiman, Mickey, and they outside that grafting shack is their what do you call them, timing boxes, and they're using, usually they had homemade stuff there, but this year they had a few. They had a hellacious tornadoes go through that area down there, and I mean, it tore them up.
A hurricane, wasn't it?
Hurricane. It was. Well, I don't know what. No, it was tornado. It twisted the trees off the top where the rotational part was, and where they were like 20 miles outside of the center of the tornado, and it just pushed the trees over. And it actually, they had one building demolished, another building that was where they normally keep their office and stuff is about had to get half of it repaired. And so anyway, where's I going with this? Oh, they had some new breeder timing boxes there, and they used those steel box cages from Better Bee. And I asked him, I said, you take that top off, and right here and here on each end, there's a hole there. I said, that queen can get in. He says, yeah. He says, I said the same thing, but he says, that queen doesn't get out of there. And, you know, you put that one frame in there with that queen and that frame's empty. She lays it up for one day. So they come back every day at the same time at 1 o'clock or whatever it may be, and pull that frame off, pick her off, put her on then there's the frame that they grafted out of, and they put it back into the hive. And that's the frame that they use to put back into the, as they call it, the pin, and put her on that. So she can, yeah, got to put her in the pin, as they say, you know, and that's another thing. You'll see it in that video I did last couple of years ago, is that when they get done grafting with them frames, they go out there to the spigot, and they have a hose with a squirter on, or they take their finger on the end of it, and they squirt everything out of that grafting frame, wash it out so it's clean, no eggs or nothing in there, no larvae. Shake it out, shake the water off of it, put it in that hive, and there's a position for that one frame, and the bees will, you know, dry it out, clean it up, fix the combs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then when that queen lays that one day, and that frame is out, and then on the 4th day, they have it all mapped out. They'll pull that frame up. That's frame or day 4. And that's the one you're going to be using to graft. So they've got certain cell builders that are Russians, and certain ones that are Italians. And then every 3 years, they're rotating into a new, breeder queen that they're doing down there.
Yep.
So
it was definitely impressive watching just how, I mean, you can just tell how experienced and comfortable they are with, I mean, like he was even like picking those attendants up and just whipping them in those games.
I know. And I watched him, and I tried it the last time I was down there. He said, yeah, here, sit down here. I said, how do you pick them up without stinging? Well, they
very carefully.
Yeah.
Well, they pick them things up, and I was like, well, do you put the butt in first? No. You put the head in first.
Right.
And he says, I take my other finger like a nail or something and kind of give them a little shove to go on down in there. But they're so used to that.
Yeah.
And they're doing like that. And like they put 7 of them in there. 6 or 7 is the number. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, if you ever see on the magazines like ABJ, where they have the little bee stool, you know, where it's a cushion at the top, and there's a pocket off to the left, and there's a pocket, you know, a wooden pocket on left and right, and maybe something in the middle. That's what they use. That's what that's for, is when you're picking queens. Yep. They got a big fat cushion, and there's a strap that goes over top where you can pick that up with a strap, move it to the next hive, you sit on it on the left. And that was another thing I seen. They're going into that hive, and here's the JZBZ cup, and they pick that cup, and and on the left side of that thing, they throw it in that side compartment on the left. And then on the right, they have cages, or the bee cages, the queen cages, and they have cork pile where the corks are. And they pick that cage up, they find the queen, they put her in, they put all the bees in, they grab a cork and cork it, and then underneath where they're sitting right in the middle, that's where they put all their queens. Now, if it's a Russian,
he like lifted that flap up and just threw them in there.
Huh?
He lifted that flap up, and it was all filled with queen cages in there. Yeah.
That's all. I asked him, I said, how many queens do you cage in 8 hours? He said, well, it don't really take us 8 hours, or about 6 hours a day. They'll do at least 100 per person.
Wow.
Yep.
Incredible.
You know, that's what they're expecting you to do, is at least 100 of them in 6 hours.
That's the kind of thing, though. You spend a day doing that, you're going to be 100 times better at the end of the day than the beginning of the day.
Oh yeah.
You spend a week doing it, you're probably 75% of the way there. You know, it's just repetition.
Yeah.
It is. And then now they'll buy, like, they got the 3-hole wooden cage, and they buy them by the cases. They got thousands of them in a case from Man Lake. So they buy the wooden piece. They buy the little piece of wire. They make their own candy, and they got done picking queens and whatever. Well, they went back to the shed. I guess it was last year. One's shoving candy in the one hole, and then putting a cork in that hole, and then the next guy. I didn't realize it, but if you take notice the next time if you get a cage like that, there's a piece of paper, white paper, that's over top of that candy. I said, "What's that for?" He said, "So the bees don't eat it, coming through the screen." So here he is. He licks it, puts it on that thing. Then they put the screen on. Then they sit there and staple that thing, and then throw it in a box over there. So they got cages. They have to make them all up. And,
and that's what I assumed too, because he was only putting a cork in that one side. So I figured they're probably already got the candy in them, right?
Oh yeah, candy. Yeah. Everything is done.
Yeah,
all those cages are prepped. All they got to do is put the queen in, put the attendants in, and put the cork in. It's over with. If they're running Russians, they put an R on that with a pencil. If it's not marked R, it's an Italian, because that's the two types that they run there. I won't say they're purebred Russians, like some of the Russian breeders, have to be just so.
Yeah,
I don't think they're quite that. They sell Russians, but I won't say they're purebred.
They're hybrids.
So do they drop queen cells the next day or later that day?
Well, usually they go and they'll pull queens that morning, come back after lunch, and drop queen cells that afternoon.
Okay.
And that day that I was there this past week, they did it all in one. They got done pulling queens, and they went right back, and they got out their little children's sand buckets with thousands of queens in there, queen cells, and they just pick it out there and put it in. And I'm looking. He says, "Yeah, look at him." He says, "Here's about 5 or 6 queens walking around in the bucket." And I said, "Well, do you put those queens, those virgins?" in there? He says, "No." He says, "We either pinch them or we'll throw them in." There's a little teeny feeder in there. Each side has a feeder, as I show in the video there. He said, "I'll throw her in that feeder and let her get, coated with sugar water, and they'll slick her." And then he says they have a better acceptance rate when she's coated up with a little bit of sugar water. But they don't care, well, it's like everything else, it's like with me and lumber. People come, "Look at that board, look at that board, look at that board." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a piece of lumber. What about it?"
Yeah.
Or let's say it's a scrap piece, you that don't have the scrap piece. "Oh, I'll take that home and I can make this out of it, make that." To me, it's like, that's a piece of firewood, throw it in the dumpster. And that's the way they kind of look at their queens. There's a queen going across the table there. You or I like, "Oh man, let's grab that queen. We can use that queen." There's, what they do. They go, bam, smash it. Get rid of it. It's no good to them. There's 1,200 more cells sitting in there waiting to be hatched. I asked them about their incubator, which is an old time refrigerator. Got a heater in there, a light bulb. And we're talking, just an incandescent light bulb. And they're having problems about getting an incandescent light bulb because they don't want to make them anymore. And I said, "What about the moisture content?" He says, "No, I don't put no water in there." He said, "I want them things." He said, "If you put moisture in there, they'll hatch faster. I don't want them to hatch faster." He's trying to slow them down so he has time to get them into those breeding boxes and stuff. And he said they'll hatch out slower. They cut themselves out slower. That's why you'll see him on one of the videos where he dumps all them cells out onto the table there. He's not worried about, shaking them or anything like that, because the cells are hard, and they're also probably at the point where they're within a day or two of hatching anyway. So it's like everything else. When you're in it at the big game like that commercially, you're doing it in a different way than what we do.
Yeah.
And they do it certain ways to suit them because of how they work and everything. Their problem is like everybody else, trying to find people to work.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it's 10:27. It's been a good night talking on all kinds of different topics, and
Yeah.
glad
th-
everybody stopped by
thanks,
tonight.
thanks for the community for sharing all their resources and experiences. I always appreciate whenever I need to lean on you guys. Appreciate it.
I just wanted to throw in there really quick. Bees in the Weeds has a really great video on trophy mites.
AAA Labs. Yeah. All right.
AAA.
Yep. Have a fantastic week, with your bees, and hope everybody's going to make lots of honey if that's what you're into.
Yeah. Grammy, I hope you feel better.
Yeah, take care of yourself.
We'll see everybody on Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Bill's show, Bees All Day. And I think Nancy might have hers this coming Wednesday at 6:30. Beekeeping with Nancy. And then, of course, back with me on next Friday night. So we'll see y'all later.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.